Hi guys, it's GK. Do you remember Fukushima, where the Great Japan Earthquake occurred in March 2011? This incident caused the Fukushima Nuclear Power Plant to leak. Recently, the Japanese government decided to release the contaminated water from nuclear power plants by diluting it to a level that does not affect the human body. Amid growing controversy, the most talked about is tritium in contaminated water. When this tritium enters the human body, genes are modified and cells are destroyed, causing various cancers or reducing reproductive function. It takes about 30 years to release all of this contaminated water, and experts point out that if contaminated water is released into the ocean, it will reach Jeju Island and the West Sea in Korea within a month. The biggest reason why Japan takes this approach is that it is the cheapest and fastest way to deal with contaminated water. In the end, they will take the safety of neighboring countries as hostage for their own benefit. The countries that suffer most directly from this are Korea and China. However, the way the two countries deal with this is completely different. The strongest statement by the Chinese government is as follows.
海洋不是日本的垃圾桶，太平洋也不是日本的下水道。日方处理核废水，不应让全世界买单。日本个别官员称，这些水喝了也没事儿，那请他喝了再说。日方不应忘却历史悲剧，更不应揣着明白装糊涂。
However, after these remarks, we have not been able to see Chinese move directly and take action. On the other hand, the Chinese media, looking at Korea's attitude toward Japan, are responding that Korea has finally emerged, that there is something to come to Japan. First of all, Tencent reported that Korea, which is experienced in dealing with Japan, is stabbing Japan's sore spots in 5 ways. In particular, many Chinese media reported that Korea, unlike China, is dealing with Japan at such a fast pace that Japan cannot come to its sense, and that Korea, which has abundant experience in dealing with Japan, knows how to deal with it. NetEase News reported that Korea has already started working on the discharge of contaminated water from Japan, but China is still indecisive. In addition, Korea is trying to pressure Japan and inform the international community in connection with international organizations, and Koreans who have dealt with Japan in the past say the large and small markets are boycotting Japanese products. They even said Korea will not show generosity in overpowering Japan and leave a message of support for Korea at the end of the news. In particular, China's news network said that seeing Korea's rapid actions makes people feel emotional beyond admiration, adding that China has reason to learn how Korea treats Japan in the future. The response of Chinese to the news is explosive. The majority of people are disappointed with their nation's action. It seems to us that we've taken a natural step, but why do the Chinese media and citizens react so enthusiastically? The answer is simple. Because they can't do what we can. When the Korea-Japan trade dispute broke out in 2019, China was shocked beyond surprising response that Korea themselves were boycotting even though the Korean government did not step up. This is because in China, where individual interests are valued rather than groups, boycotts have few successful precedents. For example, last month, when Nike issued a statement of regret over forced labor in Xinjiang Uyghur region, the Chinese were vigorously boycotting Nike, but the ending was horrendous. When the Nike special event began online, 350,000 pairs of sneakers were sold within 3 days of the boycott. However, as the news that the boycott of Japanese products, which began in Korea in 2019, has continued even a year later, many Chinese people are sticking their tongues out. Korea's boycott of Japanese products, how much more cruel would it be? Japanese cars sold less than 40,000 a year due to Korean boycotts. delaying Uniqlo and Japanese cars pulling out a year after the boycott. Can Japan withstand the boycott of Japanese products by Korean? Chinese media reports that Korea is an experienced country that can handle Japan is because of strong diplomatic style that Korea used to treat Japan in the past. For example, when former US President Donald Trump visited Korea in 2017, the Korean government introduced him to a comfort women victim, Lee Yong-soo, before dinner and served Dr. shrimp on the table at dinner. Regarding this, the Japanese government at the time strongly protested against Korea, saying that the representative person who rejected the Korea-Japan Comfort Women Agreement was invited, and it was for Korea to talk to the United States about this historical issue, and the Dr. shrimp was intended to emphasize to Trump that Dokdo was Korean territory. In particular, on this contaminated water issue, Korea succeeded in pressing Japan in another way on 22nd. Korea and the 8 countries of SECA held a meeting of foreign ministers in Costa Rica and adopted a joint statement on the dangers of discharging contaminated water. This joint statement was led by Korea, and it was more meaningful as it was the result of the first high-level multilateral conference urging the international community to respond jointly to Japan's discharge of contaminated water. The problem of contaminated water is directly linked to the interest of the country, so the Chinese government quickly delivered this news. First, the Global Times reported that Japan was under pressure by leading the cooperation of the Allied nations and South Korea to put them down, and Sina.com reported that Korea is leading 8 countries and is pressing Japan. In particular, Sina.com said that the US was on the side of Japan for this contaminated water crisis, but Korea is not concerned about this and is pressing Japan together with the international community, and US wanted Korea to make compromise with Japan, but that Korea is pushing Japan stronger than compromise. Sina.com also pointed out the dual attitude of the United States, saying that although the US has no problem with Japan's discharge of contaminated water, it is the first nation that quietly banned the import of Japanese seafood. The Japanese media, which has been opposed to discharging Fukushima's contaminated water until last year, are also reporting only the positive side, slowly turning to favor when the government pushed for contaminated water release. And Sankei News public opinion poll found that 47% of the Japanese people agree with the government's policy. The press is such a scary thing. The media must compliment the government for doing well and criticize it for not doing well, and send out honest and correct news. China was proud of itself as a powerful country, but when this happens, it shows a pathetic figure of silently breathing and taking only passive measures. But we, Korea, will work with the international community to stop this. Thank you for watching. Have a happy day.